Okay, this next video is going to be working with absolute and relative change, but we're going to do that in terms of inflation and the consumer price index. So remember that inflation is kind of the change in price of goods and services, and the consumer price index is kind of the table that we use to show that. Table used to show inflation. So it gives us a month-to-month and year-to-year, no words, a month-to-month and a year-to-year idea of what's happening, the changes. And here it is, right? So CPI, this is just for the last few years. And you can see month-to-month, and then you have this last column, which is annual. So in number one, if we want to find the inflation rate. Now, inflation rate is just another name for relative change because the inflation rate is a percentage. So we want to find the relative change for April of 2016. Now, that means April of 2016 is new, and April of the previous year would be old. So remember, we're going to find the relative change. We take new minus old divided by old. So April of 2016 is here. 239, 261 minus the old, which is underneath that, 236,599, and we're going to divide by 236,599. When you subtract and then divide by 236,599, we end up with a 1.1% inflation rate. And it's positive. So, I mean, you can see that it went up from 15 to 16, and that's why we can see it's a positive growth. It's a positive inflation rate. Now, number two, how much would you have expected to pay for goods in April 2016 if those goods were worth $1,500 in April 2015? Now, we could set this up as a proportion like we did in the past, but we know there was a 1.1% increase. So, if they were $1,500 now, this is how much the increase would be. So if I take $1,500 and multiply by 0.011, because that's 1.1%, I end up with 16.5, right? That's $16.50 increase. So $1,500 plus 16.5 gave us $1,516.50. That's how much they would cost in 2016 if they were $1,500 in 2015 because of the 1.1% inflation increase. We're now going to use this CPI chart to find the inflation rates for the years in the annual column because we can find from month to previous month, but we can also go by years. So for 2012, if we want to find the inflation rate, remember, inflation rate is relative change, and that's new minus old divided by old. So for 2012, 2012 would be new, so what would we use for old? Well, the old would be 2011. So I'm going to use these two values. New, 229,594 minus old, 2011, 224,939 divided by 224,939. So the one on top is always going to be new, the one on the bottom is going to be old. So new minus old divided by old. When I do that, I subtract first, then divide, I end up with a 2.07% inflation rate, right? It's an increase. And again, you can see from 11 to 12, it went up. So if it goes up, that's going to be the inflation rate, right? Positive. We're going to do the same thing for the next 2 years. So, again, you can see it's positive. So we're going to use 232.957 minus 229,594 divided by 229,594. When you do that math, we end up with 1.46%. And you continue on. Go ahead and hit pause and try it for 14 where you're going to use these two, and then 15 where you use the top two. It's an increase every year, so your number should always be positive. So hit pause, try it, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so for 2014, you found 236,736 minus 232,957 divided by 232,957 for an inflation rate of 1.62%. And in 2015, you started with the new value of 237, subtracted 236, and divided by 236 for an inflation rate of 0.12%. And you can see from between these two, it didn't go up much. I mean, it didn't even go up 3/10, not even 3 full tenths. So you know it's going to be very, very small. So if we go to number 4 and interpret the inflation rate for 2015, which was 0.12%, in a meaningful sentence. So basically, there was a 0.12% increase in the price of goods and services from 2014 to 2015. And we know it's an increase because it's positive. It's not a large increase, but it's still an increase. And number 5, last one for this video, find the inflation rate from January 2014 to January of 2015. Okay, so January of 14 to 15, old, new. All right, so I start with the January of 2015, which is this one, 233,707 minus old, 233,916. Oh, look, it's going to be negative because old is bigger than the new. When I figure this all out, I end up with a negative 0.09%. That means from January of 2014 to January of 2015, we had a decrease of 0.09% in the inflation, the price of goods and services.